大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. Long time no see. I trust I haven't missed any big news, right? Seriously though, one thing that's been bothering me is the way that a lot of news reports talk about Trump's war in Iran. In America, as you know, presidents run off of promises and lies and popularity contests, basically. And then they get elected and proceed to break all their promises and sort of change their agenda and do whatever they want, or so it seems. Trump painted himself as a bringer of peace and an ender of wars, and of course now we see that that was all a bunch of BS as America's starting what could end up being World War III, but we say that about many conflicts, so even if it doesn't, still it's war. We're starting wars. And domestically in the United States, because there's so many people who are against Trump, and so many people for Trump, and because he's such a big personality and an influential person, and he's a two-time president and very controversial, we tend to make this entire situation about Trump's war, and Trump is doing this, and how bad is Trump for starting this war and for putting our troops in danger and our country in danger and all this kind of stuff. But to me, that's very weird because I don't really see this as Trump's war. To me, this is America's war. I think the first time that I was aware of any kind of political situation at all in my entire life was when America invaded parts of the Middle East back around 1990 or 1991. And I remember that at that time, the reason we were given is that it was a preemptive strike. There were weapons of mass destruction that could potentially take out America. And at the time, a lot of people didn't buy that excuse because it was sort of like, we're going in to preempt against countries that might theoretically have something that might theoretically be used against us. It seemed kind of flimsy. And yet it was enough for us to continue warring there for quite a long time. But it stuck in my mind as sort of a mistake in trust, I guess you could call it, to believe that just because we hear that there's some imminent danger to us, that we therefore have some responsibility or even right to go invade another country. And of course, after 9/11, we did the same thing where we invaded countries that had literally nothing to do with the attacks because they harbored people who might theoretically want to do something to us. And that was kind of a continuation of this logic. And really all throughout my entire life, the US has had this recurring desire to enter the Middle East militarily, usually under the justification of imminent threat. And sometimes with no real justification at all. We just sort of go in there and take actions and bomb places and kill people because we want the Middle East to run a little bit more how we want it to be. And of course, we see that's exactly what's happening in the Middle East today. We're invading Iran, essentially, and we're doing it because they might someday develop weapons that could be used against us. That's the very flimsy excuse we're given. And one question that nobody seems to think about is, what about countries like North Korea, who we Americans are constantly told spend all day and night thinking about how much they hate us and want to kill us? They have nukes, and yet we're fine. So why is it possible that one country who, according to our propaganda, our news outlets, according to them, they hate us even more than Iran does? Why is it okay that they have a nuke and we're fine? Like, why is that the situation? And yet if Iran had one, it's just the end of the world. Doesn't really make a lot of sense when you think about it. That's why you're not supposed to think about it. You're supposed to join up and serve. So this entire thing about imminent threat is quite dubious at best. Even if you're a totally non-conspiratorial, very trusting in the government type of person, patriot, think our government's doing, for the most part, the right thing here, except for a few mistakes here and there. Even if you're that type of person, I still find it very hard to believe that you could just swallow this hook, line, and sinker again and again and just, another country is just an imminent threat. We've got to get in there and destroy everything they've got. And also, just if we happen to find some oil there, then that's cool too. How you could fall for that is really It's quite a stretch in my mind. When you take a look at a country like Cuba, for example, who we Americans allegedly hate, but really it's just our government that hates Cuba. I mean, ask any random American throughout all of America, and you cannot find a single American who can even articulate why America has any grudge against Cuba. Some of them will say, remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? And you go, no, I wasn't alive in the 1960s, right? And even that, when you really think about the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, it's a very weird thing to still bring up, because they have the legal right to have nukes in their country, even if they're Soviet owned. Why does that mean we are allowed to invade their country? So it's the same logic. If we're allowed to have nukes, and if we believe in equality at all, then other countries surely have the right to have nukes. And if they don't, neither should we. If you disagree with this, to me, it's just, there's no way to claim that you're not a superiorist, that you're not a Western chauvinist or a hegemonist. If you think that there's some reason, any reason at all, that the United States should have nukes and that a different country shouldn't, I just can't see how you can hold that position and at the same time say that we believe in freedom or equality or states' rights or countries' rights, statehood, an international community of peers. I mean, it just doesn't go together. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but I just think it's a huge conflict in viewpoints. So given that we have this very long and rich history of invading countries that we just are telling you are a big threat to us, given that that's been happening literally my entire life, especially in the Middle East, it then seems quite weird when I read all these articles and blog posts and videos and whatever, just directly condemning and damning Trump for this. Because it seems quite clear to me, and again, I'm not a very conspiratorial type of person, but it seems very clear to me that with or without Trump, if it was someone else or however the structure of the government of the US is or was, this type of thing was going to happen anyway, because we've already done it before multiple times, and presumably we're going to continue to do it, even after Trump's out of office. So it seems like a kind of a minor point, but I think it opens up a wider discussion and wider and more interesting to me point, which is that when you take the head of a state and you pin everything on that head of state, whether it's everything good or everything bad or however you feel about that head of state, and you make it so that that person represents all of the actions of their country, it's a very tricky situation that you're getting yourself into, because in a way it seems like you're talking about justice. You're holding the person responsible who's taking these actions. And maybe that's true to some degree, but in another way, you're really allowing that state to continue to do those things indefinitely. Because once Trump is out, if you then sigh a sigh of relief and say, oh, thank God, now we're not going to do this warring in the Middle East anymore because Trump is gone, I think you really missed the point, which is that this isn't Trump's war. This is America's war. We love this kind of stuff. And this is, of course, part of, maybe it's even accidental, but it is part of the sort of propaganda-ish world that we live in America, where we so identify with individualism that we will take the president of the United States and assign everything bad that the country does to him. And again, once he's gone, America will still continue to do these things. So what really did it have to do with him? Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people saying, oh, he did this and he did that. And that's true. But it just seems that there's an undercurrent of pressure towards these things in the US government that is not actually tied to any specific individuals therein. So this is one example of where overemphasizing the individual can actually lead to repeated wars, repeated interventionism, and all this stuff that's not supposed to be what the left, whatever that means to you, is fighting for in America. Certainly not the anti-war crowd, to whatever degree that still exists in America. People like myself who think that we shouldn't just carte blanche invade everywhere we don't like. I mean, we don't think that that's such a radical idea, but people like us tend to really think about why is it that America wants to do this? And really the answer isn't Donald Trump. Sorry, that's just a cartoonish way of looking at things. Now, we could get into the history of the United States and how good World War II was for the US and how it became the global superpower, and how we've continued that line of, to put it in a non-charitable way, let's say exploitation of war spoils and all this kind of stuff. But we don't even have to go through judgment and all that. We could talk about the history of the US and why it actually needs wars to survive and how it is to thrive and that kind of stuff. And we can talk about individualism and how it leads to this type of thing. But the main point I want to get across in this video is that when you exclusively pin the actions of the United States on one person or even one administration, even though that may serve a purpose, just be very careful to not lose track of the overall history of this country, which is that the United States absolutely loves war. We love it. We love it and we need it. And though you can walk around and interview every American you see, and a lot of them will talk about how they don't want war, in fact, as a country, as a government, as a geopolitical force, we need war desperately. And so we will continue to intervene. We will continue to start wars. We will continue to take what we can take. And, all the discussions about the U.S. on the decline and flailing and all this other stuff, subject for another video. But even if we were on the up and up, we still need this to rise. And currently, we need it to stay afloat. So it's not really Donald Trump's fault. So that's really something that I think about, is all these articles, Trump. And honestly, as his term is up, if he doesn't find a way to go for another one, I think that you'll see more and more pinning on Trump all of the things that happened during his presidency, in particular the war and all that kind of stuff, because I think it gives the public, the American public, a scapegoat in a way. Okay, now that he's gone, we're done with that and all that bad stuff is gone. But it's not gone to the people who are dead. It's not gone to the Iranians. It's not gone to the war-ridden zones. It's not gone just because the president's out. In the end, I think that it's important to remember it's not Trump's war, it's America's war. This is what America does. And this is one of the things that I really, really want to change about the United States when it comes to the geopolitical strategy that we have. So unfortunately, it's not so easy as just becoming pacifist, because that also means surrendering the empire. So anyway, some food for thought. If you still enjoy these videos, let me know. Support, like, comment, subscribe, leave angry comments or happy comments, whatever. And until next time, I'm Nathan Rich. Thanks, everybody. 谢谢.